of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call the meeting to order. All right. First order of business is public announcements, which details may be found at www.fairfieldme.com. Nomination papers for the November 8th municipal election are due on September 9th. There are 2 seats for the town council and 1 seat for Kennebec Water District. Please contact our town clerk for details. The second is the town office and all non-emergency services will be closed on Monday, September 5th, in observance of Labor Day. Second order of business is public hearings. Has the manager overview Zoom protocols to participate?
So for folks that are out in Zoom land, which there currently aren't any other than Councillor Townsend, so if folks have any questions, they would go to the reactions button down at the bottom of the screen and raise their hand, and then they would be called on to speak. Similar to if you are looking at your screen, what Matt has done.
Okay.
So, and that's about it. But we don't have any members of the public, just Councillor Townsend at this point. So.
Okay. Our first order of business would be to hear from the public on a liquor license renewal application, Class 11 restaurant, submitted by Joda, LLC DBA Meridian's Kitchen Bar at 166 Main Street, Fairfield. I declare the public hearing open, and those that wish to speak may sign in and give name and address. There being none, I declare the public hearing closed. Third order of business, public comments. 3-minute limit or equivalents. Members of the public may email comments for council at info@fairfieldme.com by 4 p.m. the day of the meeting on any topic or agenda item. Items may be read aloud at this time. There are no items. Okay. Fourth order of business, reports from staff and committees. Town manager report.
All right, so on July 28th, I attended the First Park General Assembly meeting. On August 2nd, we did have an Economic Community Development Committee meeting, which Councillor Thibodeau will report on. August 9th through the 12th, I did attend the Manager's Interchange training that was up at Sugarloaf. On the 16th, I did meet with the Public Works Director and Lynch Landscaping regarding continuing the brush removal from Mill Island Park to along the riverfront here, which is on the back of Mill Street. So this would carry from the bridge all the way to the end of the community center parking lot. So that would clear all of the brush and undergrowth that's happening along the edge of the river, of anything that is less than 4 inches at the waist. And also clear, we have like 3 dead trees out there, so that would clear that up as well. So we're waiting on a full estimate from them. What they are hoping to do, because of ease of service, would be to continue that once they're done at Mill Island. So they're going to be doing all the brush removal around Mill Island and in and around all of the foundations and bringing that all back. And then they would like to continue over to here. So once we get that estimate, there's a chance it may have to come to the town council because of the cost, but we're not sure yet. We haven't received that. So that would all be done. And then also on the 16th, we did have a KVCOG Board of Directors meeting, which I attended. We're putting together a plan for the fee assessments for municipalities that are members of COG. Normally those fees are done on a year-by-year basis, and we're looking at the need to have to increase those fees. And what they're looking to do is to do small incremental changes over the course of the next 2 to 3 years. So we're working on that piece. On the 18th, I did attend the Diversity, Equality, and Inclusion Breakfast. That was a kickoff for that committee being revamped in Waterville. So that was a good meeting. They brought up some folks from Lewiston that have actually a diversity manager in their community, and the things that they've had to do for all of the immigrants that they had some great insights and ideas. And also on the 18th, there was a First Park Executive Board meeting that I attended. Some updates on some projects for you. I had reported at the last meeting that we were going to be meeting with DEP at the closed landfill regarding the solar project. We did meet on site with them. There were some stumps that needed to be removed. There was some concern that they could go into the cap. All those concerns have been alleviated. The stumps were able to be removed in the area in which they needed them taken from in order to finish setting up their array. So that's all set. Town office sewer line was repaired on the 10th, and the parking lot lines were corrected that were in the back side of the parking lot. The food pantry sign that they had been here to request has been installed. That looks good. And also the car charging station over here in the parking lot off of Mill Street is fully functional. And we will start working on a promotional campaign for that at that location. So that's it for me.
Okay. Next would be committee reports. Yes, Stephanie.
The Economic and the Community Development Committee met at the beginning of August, and we reviewed our map activity that we did, and it was quite impressive to see everything all laid out. That information is going to be sent over to KV-COG, and they're going to incorporate that also with the map that they're doing for us. We talked about what is to come next.
Yep.
We're working on 3 goals. The first goal is to initiate community involvement, and in September, when we meet, we are going to create a plan on how to get the community involved. We've already done the community survey, and we want to do the draft activity for the map as well with the community. The second goal is to write the plan and then go for council approval. And then the third goal is to, once the plan is in place, get community involved so that we can schedule work days. And that way, everybody will have a chance to, if they want to, have input into what we're doing. So again, September, if the public wants to join us, we're going to be talking about how to get the community involved. And we'd love to have some people from the public join us.
Excellent. Okay. Any other committee reports? Anybody? Okay. All right, then we'll move to the 5th order of business, which is the consent agenda. Now, these items are considered routine.
Wait. Matt has his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, man. I missed you.
Real quickly, I want to thank Stephanie for that. The other thing I wanted to ask her about, because I keep on getting conflicting reports in the community about this water park out on Mill Island. Stephanie, can you talk to the idea that we have a water park on Mill Island?
We have never talked about a water park out on Mill Island. Yeah. The closest thing that we've gotten is maybe some portage access for the park, for Mill Island itself, but we've never talked about a water park.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Okay. Now we'll move on to the 5th order of business, the consent agenda. These items, again, are considered routine and standard business and therefore will be enacted with one motion. There's no separate discussions on these items unless a council member so requests prior to consideration of this portion of the agenda, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered next on the agenda. All right, item 2295, ordered that the town council hereby waives a reading of and accepts the minutes of the meeting 2022-13 held on July 27, 2022. The next item would be 2296, ordered that the town council hereby approves treasurer's warrant number 54, general fund in the amount of $112,142.54, not limited to but including motor vehicle, MMA, and U.S. Bank Corp.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? There being none, all in favor? We have to do a roll call.
We do, yeah. Chairman Pachadi?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Hooper?
Yes.
Thibodeau?
Yes.
Townsend?
Aye.
Unanimous, thank you.
Okay. Now we'll move to the 6th order of business, which is to take action on the following items of business. as read by Council Chair. Item 2297, ordered that the Town Council hereby approves a liquor license renewal application, Class 11 restaurant, submitted by Joda LLC DBA Meridian's Kitchen Bar, 166 Main Street, Fairfield.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
Any issues?
No, I'm sorry.
No?
Done.
Okay. Roll
Is
call.
there a chance you could be unaware of some?
Probably not.
Okay, I didn't think so.
Bichotti,
Yes.
Taylor,
Yes.
Cooper,
Yes.
Thibodeau,
Yes.
Townsend.
Aye.
Unanimous, thank you.
Item 2298, ordered that the Town Council hereby signs the warrant for special town meeting municipal election to be held on November 8th, 2022.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Bichotti,
Yes.
Taylor,
Yes.
Cooper,
Yes.
Thibodeau,
Yes.
Townsend.
Aye.
Thank you. It's unanimous.
Item 2299, ordered that the Town Council hereby considers appropriating funds to be taken from the undesignated fund balance to reduce the amount to be raised from taxation for the 2022-2023 fiscal year, as per the annual town meeting warrant, Article 31.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion, questions? Yes, Michelle.
Okay, so you would have gotten a copy of the spreadsheet, which is the worksheet for the draft 2022 tax commitment. You are required, based upon the article for paving, to use at least $150,000 from the undesignated fund balance, because the article was written that the in-town paving program would be offset by that. Article 31 stated you could use up to $400,000 from the undesignated fund balance. The assessor has provided to you and the worksheet using only the $150,000. And the reason for that is that this, currently the way that it sits, drops the mill rate, 1 mil, using just the $150,000. There is some concern as to what will happen to revenue sharing based upon the election that is happening in November. We know that the school system received additional funds from the federal government, then in turn from the state, because of COVID this year, which allowed their budget to stay relatively stable with a slight drop, but could potentially increase for next year. So the concern is that if you use the full $400,000 from the undesignated fund balance, you may very well drop the mill rate 2 mils. However, next year you may very well end up needing to raise the mill rate 4 mils. So, to take the conservative approach, use the $150,000, drop it, use just the $150,000, so that while you do still decrease property taxes, we're not creating this jumping up and down effect and creating the stability, because of course too, your mill rate absolutely affects folks with mortgages that have escrow accounts. So that they may very well drop this year, but then they could skyrocket next year. As well as the fact that we don't know, that everybody keeps talking about the fact that there's going to be a recession and people are going to stop spending money and buying new cars, which impacts our excise tax. So this might be the safer route for you to go for this year. But it is ultimately up to the council how much you use, up to the $400,000.
So,
Stephanie?
I have a question. Is the $150,000 for paving separate from this $150,000 to drop the mill rate?
No.
So that would cover just that?
So we have from time to time written articles in which the article is written such that you know that it is going to be funded by the undesignated fund balance, which is exactly what we did with that paving article. It states within it that $150,000 would be taken from the undesignated fund balance. So that because that voted yes, you must use that $150,000 from the undesignated fund balance. When we put the budget together, we showed the 150,000 and then the 250,000, so that it was a sum total of 400,000. So the 150 was part of that 400, up to 400.
Okay.
Okay, any more questions or concerns? Roll call.
Oh, Matt has his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Matt, missed you again.
Just to be clear, nothing would preclude us from using additional undesignated funds balance going forward.
I think I need you to clarify that question.
So at this point, we're saying 150,000, but there's early in the process. So, I mean, maybe we want to use, we may end up finding we will be, but I think being conservative right now would be the way to go.
In the future, but not this tax commitment. We're going to commit taxes tomorrow, okay?
Okay.
Okay,
Understood.
so once taxes are committed, there's no going back from that. The other
Okay.
piece of this is when I created the budget back in December, our revenue projections for state revenue sharing was $1 million. That was the number we used. Our current projections are at 1.4 million, which those projections never come out until after we've completed our budget process. So that's kind of the other reason why you don't need that 400,000 is the full 400,000, because revenue sharing projections are higher than what we had budgeted. So we're right now conservatively using the 1.2 in revenue sharing, not the full 1.4, simply because of the fact that it is an estimate, it's a projection, it's not a guarantee, so you go a little bit conservative. Because say there is a recession, sales tax, income tax, all of that drops, we're not going to get that full projection. So we're using most of it, just slightly under.
Thank you for the clarification.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Roll call.
We have a motion by Taylor, seconded by Thibodeau. Do we have a friendly amendment to appropriate the $150,000 discussed?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. All in consensus on that?
Yes.
Okay. Pechotti?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Cooper? Thibodeau?
Yes.
Townsend?
Aye.
Okay, carries forward.
Unanimous.
All right, moving to the 7th order of business. Council workshop and other business. First on that order is discuss proposed revisions to the public safety ordinance. Yes, Chief.
Good evening.
Good evening.
In looking through the public safety ordinance, I've always had concerns over some specific crimes that people could be convicted of and still obtain a taxi license. Taxi operators pick up people in the middle of the night, sometimes intoxicated, sometimes children. Parents, I'm sure, will from time to time send a taxi for somebody. And I think it would be appropriate if we had some sort of limitations where I could prevent somebody from obtaining a taxi license, at least until they formulate an appeal in front of the full board. And I've listed out the crimes that I think should be an automatic denial. They're listed in your, I assume, in your packets. And so for the taxi ordinance, I'd like to see those added in there so that I can initially appeal it, and at least it will trigger some sort of an appeal to the full board, and you can take a look at all of the information involved and make a decision whether or not that person should be operating a taxi or not.
Yes, Michelle.
So I would just like to add for anyone that's watching at home, what these prohibitions would be having been convicted of murder, attempted murder, felony murder, manslaughter, if the conviction is a result of dangerous driving or driving under the influence, elevated aggravated assault, elevated aggravated assault on a pregnant person, striking, aggravated reckless conduct if the violation involved a vehicle, kidnapping, criminal restraint, theft by extortion, violation of privacy, endangering the welfare of a dependent person, robbery, criminal attempt if the underlying crime was murder, attempted murder, felony murder, or kidnapping. So it's not your average, everyday sort of piece. There's some pretty specific reasons as to why we would not want to issue a taxi cab license.
Currently, a person with a conviction for murder 11 years ago would come in, fill out an application, or kidnapping, would fill out an application for a taxi license, and I'd have no ability to deny that. And it is a situation that we have recently run into, which kind of triggered this for us. For me, excuse me.
Okay. Anybody else got anything to say?
So we would go ahead for your next meeting and schedule the public hearing, so to do the
Schedule a public
ordinance
meeting,
amendment.
put it on the agenda, yes.
Yeah.
Now, there are other changes in there too, which is the yard sale ordinances.
Yes.
And I think that's just cleaning up what, kind of discussing in the article what a yard sale is and what a violation would be, and doing away with the permits to have a yard sale on your own property.
And then there was also the removal of some fees out of this and putting them in your fee schedule.
Correct. Takes all of the fines out for the different specific violations that we issue, and it puts them into the town's, excuse me, I forgot what it's called.
The council's fee schedule.
Council's fee schedule. So the officers, if they were issuing a citation, they would refer to the council's fee schedule for the fee amount. We are coming up with our own citation form that they will issue, and then they would have to come to the town office and pay the town the fee amount. Very similar to a parking ticket.
Yep.
Quick question, Chief.
Yes, sir.
Back to the prohibition list on there. I'm assuming anybody on the sex offender registry is automatically...
Automatically
That,
popular.
that's part of it already?
Correct.
Okay, I just double checking.
But if the sexual offense, say, happened 30 years ago, they would not be on the sex offender registry. Some
Right.
sex offenders have 10-year registry requirements, but probably still shouldn't be operating a cab and picking up children.
Should that be, or it's not even, you won't even get flagged with it if you check?
I'll get flagged if I check, yes.
Okay, should that
But
be,
This will cover those specific individuals.
it will, okay.
Yep. The background that we do goes back to, when that person was born.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else got anything?
Pardon me?
Town clerk.
Went out.
Was that oh, that's not me. Oh, minus.
Okay, nobody else has anything, we'll move on to number 2, which is discuss proposed repeal of the solid waste ordinance due to discontinued contact with Penobscot Energy Recovery Company, which is PERC.
This is an ordinance that the town of Fairfield had had since 1995.
Yep.
It was still on the books. When we withdrew from PERC a couple of years ago, this just did not get repealed at that
Okay.
time. It's just simply, in all this dealt with was, it was more of an ordinance regarding the haulers, and when we had to have the haulers ensure that we had the appropriate amount of tonnage based upon our PERC contract, is really what this is. This doesn't have anything to do with the solid waste pieces that are actually in your council administrative policies.
Okay.
This is separate from that. So this would just be you have to do a public hearing and vote to actually repeal the ordinance.
I'm good.
You're good? Okay. We can do it. All right, the third is discuss ARPA funds, which I think everybody has a pack in there. And it was it's in a list that was put forth by the department heads. and it's their wish list. We talked about it earlier, last meeting. And there's two different scenarios that are regarding retention bonuses, and they contain costs including taxes and insurance for 5,000 full-time, 3,000 less than full-time. Breakdown, as mentioned at the last meeting, breakdown using 3,000 for full-time, 1,500 for part-time, and 750 for less than part-time. Keeping in mind that while this item has been placed on the agenda as a workshop item, nothing prevents us from making a motion. Yes.
You did receive two updated sheets this evening. One would have been listed as fire, one would have been listed as police.
Yep.
The original packet, when it went out, an email that you received was missing the, some software, not software. It was missing, almost not on this cover either. The police department had some equipment that they wanted, so to allow the police officers to do drug detection, which was safer. And then the fire one, it was simply an update. We received the price for the estimated cost for the generator for the community center, which you didn't have before.
Right, okay.
Find the pages for this.
Does anybody want to start? Yes,
Matt has his
Matt.
hand up.
you're up.
Good. So I guess what I would like to do, just start off with, is actually a few points of clarification. Because out there in the public, it's been called bribery money. So that kind of impugns the good standing of town government and that people are working hard in this process. So if it is bribery money, then there's, usually I take it as a bribery, means I'm giving something back. So, Michelle, can you explain what the strings are that are attached so that so we can assuage people of their fears of this bribery money?
Yeah, I certainly can. So there's the American Rescue Plan Act was signed by President Biden in March of 2021. These funds are, it basically, a portion of it, and I'm going to read to you direct because the definition can get complicated, but it says a portion of the ARPA amendment amended the Social Security Act to establish a coronavirus state fiscal recovery fund and a coronavirus local fiscal recovery fund. So basically, the state and local fiscal recovery funds established by ARPA are intended to help state, local, and tribal governments respond to the impact of COVID-19 of their communities, residents, and businesses. The Fiscal Recovery Fund provided over $350 million in emergency funding to state and local governments, building on the expanding assistance provided to these governments over the last year, including through the Coronavirus Relief Act. So, if you remember when coronavirus first happened, small business loans were being done by economic development agencies everywhere. Those were done for private businesses. So what happened is the portion was finally funded for the local, state, and municipalities. And it was also distributed at the county level. Some municipalities, being smaller than others, were put into different categories. And then there were some that were singled out, so your larger communities, Portland, Bangor, all of that. It does come with some specific eligible uses. So they are things such as fight the pandemic and support families and businesses struggling with the public health and economic impacts, maintain vital public services, even amid declines in revenue resulting from the crisis. Build a strong, resilient, and equitable recovery by making investments to support long-term growth and opportunity. There was a final ruling that was done in April of 2022, so this year, gave 4 broad categories for eligible uses of SLF-RF. Responding to the public health emergency or its negative economic impacts, assistance to households, small businesses, nonprofits, impacted industries, tourism, travel, hospitality. providing premium pay to eligible workers responding to the public health emergency, provide government services to the extent of the reduction in revenue due to COVID-19, and making necessary investments in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. So when these funds were first announced that they would be coming out, this town council had at that time decided that they were going to use these funds towards our public drinking water program or for helping with the assistance of PFAS response on a community level. Once that piece has kind of now taken a back seat, or at least, there's a small hiatus on that, the council has started to discuss other possible options for that. You can still hold this money and use it for water if you would like to, or sewer, or broadband infrastructure. You can use it for most anything. However, these funds are being discussed by our various different union negotiation teams, and so this is where this piece came into play, starting to talk about all of those things. But it's certainly not a bribe that I have found. It comes with a lot of federal requirements, like all federal funds.
Thank you, Michelle. I guess a follow-up to that, the town government's been called a thief, so I guess that means I'm a thief. If we don't give this money to people who couldn't or didn't work during the pandemic, I think those were other funds like you already referred to, but I think there's a miscommunication and a misunderstanding of what these funds, where these funds came from, what they're meant for, just like you just explained.
Right.
Would that be correct?
That very well could be correct. So there are some things that you can do with this, but one of the things you can't do is, like all funds, all municipal government funds, you cannot use public funds for private gain, right? So the fact that municipalities and the counties have looked at this as funding towards their staff is one of those things where, as if you have quality staff, then you are ultimately funding the entire community. So that's not looking at private gain, as opposed to, you live on High Street, so you get a check and you get a check, right? That's what the state government did with their funds. That's not what's being done at the local level.
Thank you.
And how, just kind of a little bit off the record, and how is this being handled in other communities?
So the other thing that happened in April of 2010 with the final ruling was that every municipality was allowed to claim up to $10 million worth of revenue loss. Okay, so basically what they tried to do at the federal level was take a really complicated reporting requirement and simplify it. So that if you are a municipality that you can prove that you had a $10 million revenue loss, or say you're a municipality like Fairfield who doesn't even receive $10 million in revenue, you could inherently just claim that you had a $10 million revenue loss because you were under it. Those that had over that had to do the math calculation. That's the piece that came from the feds. So we are in turn allowed to use these things as long as we use them under the federal standards for pretty much anything municipal government related. So there were some stipulations when it came to the eligible workers responding to the public health emergency. So there were some stipulations in the beginning that if you were volunteers, on call, those sort of things, you were not eligible for these funds, which is why some municipalities did not use them that way and did more of the retention piece, because under the $10 million revenue loss category, retention of employees is an eligible purpose. Providing, some towns did, I think I had provided it to you the first time we discussed this, where I had polled some of the towns as to what they had done and started compiling a list. Some of them did 2 years worth of $1 an hour raise, or some of them said, everybody just gets $1,000 or $500 or various different, because every municipality is unique, there is no apple-to-apple comparison as to what folks have done with these funds.
Right, I understand that.
Right. It's kind of limitless in some respects, but you still have to follow the federal and state guidelines.
Right. Okay. Hear from other councilors?
Just one quick question. Between the retention bonuses on the 3 to 5 and the 1.5 to 3, on the 3,001, the library has 2 full-time, 2 part-time, 2 less than 20, and they have a total of 5 listed on the front page. Should that be 2 and 4?
It should be,
2 full-time, 4 part-time?
I think in the original piece, they forgot one.
So it is 6 employees?
It's 6.
It's a total of 6, so
It's
it
a
should be
total of 6, not 5.
2 and 4 on the
Yeah,
first
so we
page.
have 2 folks that are full-time, 2 folks that are part-time, and we have 2 folks that work like 1 day a week or a weekend.
So are they considered under part-time then on the first page of the,
Yes,
okay, so it'd be
Yes.
2 full-time, 4 part-time?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So what happened was, what I did, well, I mean, it's, as you can see, we did the less than 20. So basically, the thought process was when the council was discussing this, you were talking about doing this on a quarterly basis. So that if someone worked within that quarter, then they would in turn be eligible for that quarterly increment. So if the goal was to retain and have staff working for us, they would actually have to work within that quarter in order to receive payment for it, which is why we broke it down a little bit differently. And with thinking this process through, thinking that by the original piece that we had discussed, very quickly at the last meeting, whether you were either full-time or you were part-time, wasn't necessarily fair for those that actually come to work and work 20 hours a week and the one person who shows up 1 time a year to do a call.
Yeah.
Right? So it didn't seem like that was just justifiably fair. So this was a kind of a way to strike a balance through that and also, encourage folks that do work for us on a volunteer and on-call basis to actually fulfill those roles.
Yep.
Well, my feeling is, because we had suggested two possibilities, the 5,000 or the
Right.
3,000, and the 3,000, or, as Michael said, the 3,000 and then the 1,500 and then 750 for less than 20 hours. We have before us quite an extensive wish list from all the department heads. And I was surprised when I've read it through how much is really needed or would be liked. And I realize that some of the items would come under capital improvements. Some items are already worked into the budgetary process, for instance, on vehicle replacement. So, and that was mentioned in here. But overall, what we're looking at in the department heads, so I'm calling it a wish list because I haven't any other better term for it. There is a lot to be considered. I think for me, our citizen safety is important. And thinking about like the generator for the community center, that's important. Security cameras is important. I think that with so much need actually within our community, I don't think that we should go with the 5,000, 3,000 option, but rather go with the other one. Because overall, as a community, we all benefit from it. And because there is a lot in here that could be addressed.
I can't completely disagree with you on that, but I do take exception to the fact that we can have these wonderful tools and things off that wish list. If we don't have the staff.
And I see that, Michael. And but there's not a lot of that. I saw, it is in here, but there's not a lot of it. But I'm thinking about, what if there was a real emergency? Where would people go? Suppose it's a bad winter and we need to use this building as a warming center. We talked about this, and I really, that makes more sense. So if we take a look at what's in the so-called wish list and kind of prioritize the needs, because some things are, if they're already worked into the budget, I don't think they need our attention with ARPA money. But that's my opinion.
And we do have reserve accounts
Right,
for these
capital
types.
improvements.
Capital improvement
Yep.
accounts to cover that.
Yep.
It's not a hill I'm willing to die on, but I'm certainly going to go to bat to retain employees over purchasing equipment.
Is there a way to label what could be covered by a budget item or what the priority is of each of the departments? Is there a way to label the priorities?
So for most all of these, your top piece under every department is their priority, right? So that's their most important thing. Don't pay any attention to the town office one, because that list was thrown together as quickly as we could, and we didn't have a lot of time to work on it. I met with every single department head, and I want you to know that when I met with every single department head, I also told them about the different variations between the retention bonus. And every single one of them knew that if I was asked to make a recommendation, what my recommendation was going to be. It's a terrible genie to put back in the bottle. And it sounds as though you don't appreciate the staff that you have, but that is not the case. In that while you could give retention bonuses, by giving them the tools they need to also make their jobs easier, is also beneficial to the staff. But things like, yes, we do have money in our reserve accounts, but Public Works' biggest wish was to get all of these glass doors replaced. All of our glass entry doors, because they spend more time at the town office and the community center chasing these doors. It will save them time and money in the long run, just for the sheer volume of calls they have to both locations.
Do they have a number on that?
We don't, because it will require a bid. So we didn't do anything that was going to require a full bid process. We kind of were just putting that together. The thought process with this list was, what does the council see as potential priorities, and we would go out and go do those processes and get that stuff done. But that was one of their big priorities. We know the kitchen here at the community center. It was surprising to me what some departments would put on their list that would be the same as other departments. So the kitchen at the community center is also a town office request, but they turn their list in first. So that's just where it's on the Public Works one. But we no longer rent this facility with the kitchen included. Right. Because we don't want people using that kitchen. It needs to be updated. So that's another piece that would need someone to come in and give us a proposal for. There are other pieces in here. So just simply knowing that you could still, so there are those things. Some stuff, yes, it's small, right? So, a colored printer for the children's librarian. Just goes to show you that when I said go big or go home, some of these department heads are not accustomed to that kind of thinking. And that it was a little difficult for folks because we have been in such a budgetary standpoint in which we are in survival mode to try to continue to provide the same level of services with the same exact resources, that folks don't have a tendency to think about bigger, brighter things. So it took us a bit to put this, it took a bit to put some of this stuff together, but yeah. But we could certainly try to prioritize what might be more feasible to use more towards current capital reserve accounts or current capital funding, and know that, yeah, this is really outside, or you could budget for this, but it'll take you X number of years, or that kind of stuff. We could try to do those sort of things.
And do you have I don't see the full number in here so that we can do the math?
There isn't one, because not everybody had estimates.
No, what the ARPA number is that we're...
Yeah, I don't know why that keeps...
If that was in there, that would have made the math on the retention, and what did we have left over to work with on some of the wish lists?
And I'm thinking it just didn't get printed off when you got your sheet, but you have a total of 692, 798, 71.
That's less the engineering fees? Dirigo's fees?
No, Dirigo's fees were paid for.
Oh, that come out of the grant?
That came out of the money that we received from Somerset County.
Okay. So,
We haven't expended any funds from ARPA at all.
So
we can play around with this, with that number, and do our own math on it and come up with something for our next meeting. We don't need this.
No.
Okay. So we can play around with the numbers and come up with some math. Okay.
However, Mark's, you were asking what can be covered within the budget.
Right, what items?
Do you
could
want
we-
us to go item by item? Would that make it easier for you?
I just didn't know if some of these things would be cross-covered with something else. You know what I mean? I know, because some of these departments probably just said, okay, this is what we would love to have.
Right.
You know, without, knowing, maybe for me, not knowing where.
How much of that stuff?
Okay, well,
Right.
okay.
Why don't we go?
So
item
think
by
about something right now.
Yeah.
As of right now, you think about fire. Fire's 283,000 in their capital reserve account for equipment. 400, 4,600, say 4,700, or even 50, just to make the math easy, has to go towards the payment for the pumper.
No.
That's what they have left in capital reserves. Okay? And then if you look at the fire list, so for example, I think fire's total came in at high side, 322,000.
Yes.
So that's why some of this we know would not, you would expend all of your capital reserves in order to try to fill the list.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
That's why I didn't know if they had a priority of stuff that they'd like first.
Right.
Because by going with the 1,500 and 750, we could hit more of these, like,
Right.
I think like both of you kind of wanted to go at. But you're right, though, you want to respect your employees.
But
you
if
need
on the same
equipment.
hand, we can, now that I know the number to do the math with, we can even change the retention bonuses, we can work those numbers around. Those are malleable numbers, and say, okay, we've got the 315, 750, maybe we make it 4, 2, and 1, and what do we have left over, and these numbers can go for, okay, the fire department, we can do X amount of dollars for these items. Police department, X amount of dollars for these items. Public Works, these items. That gives us a number to work with. Without that total number to work with, the 692,
And I don't know why you didn't have that, and I apologize for that. You should have had that.
Yeah, the other thing is, I would like to have some money set aside for economic and community development, and I
Is that-
mentioned that at the last meeting,
is that a viable use of?
for parks, for the playgrounds.
Yes.
Yep, and...
Did you get it on the list?
It's not.
I'm not a department.
Oh, it's too late, too late now.
No, but some of the items in here were for economic and community development, like improving the playground over here. That's one thing.
Electronic signs.
Yeah,
Electronic signs.
yeah. So there are, there is some combination of services from my standpoint with the Economic Committee, so.
Matt's had his hand up for a very long time.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead, Matt.
So I have one question, actually. Do you know of any towns that have actually declined this money?
So I don't know of any towns that did decline the money. What I do know is that when we received our final payment, we were told, the email that we received said that it was a reappropriation of funds. So back in 2021, before this was all finalized, so to get this money, you had to create a user account on the portal. you had to do assurances and guarantees, which basically means that, yes, you will expend the funds in accordance with all federal regulations, no discrimination, proper funds. If you give the funds to a nonprofit organization, you will also make sure that that nonprofit organization expends the funds in the manner in which they are given. So there's all of these different things. And you had to meet these assurances by a certain deadline. The rumor I heard is that there were some municipalities that didn't meet the deadline, smaller communities. The difference was minimal, like I think a total of, I don't even know as if it was $1,000 more than what we were projecting that we received, but of course that was divvied up amongst all member municipalities. But I know in October of '21, there was a huge call by the governor's office because out of the 477 communities in the state that were eligible, only about 50–60% of the folks had signed up for it. So I don't know who any of them are that didn't take it. The only thing I know is that when we got our final piece, it said that the numbers had varied slightly due to a redistribution of funds. That's all I know.
One of the things too from there is obviously we're looking at expenditures for our different town departments, but what about for the citizens? So like one discussion, I just posted out there trying to get ideas from people, and one was, hey, we should do water testing, anybody that wants it, rather than pay for it, rather than relying on DEP. That was just an idea. I'm just throwing it out there. Is that something that would even be able to be covered?
So that goes back to the whole taxpayer dollars for private gain. So the
Yeah, that's what I'm
public
wondering.
trust doctrine, we're not allowed to do that. So I've had those conversations with folks about testing, and these conversations came up very early on, even with PFAS, you know, about doing soil tests in people's backyards. People have asked for blood testing, all of that. We cannot do that with public charges. It's not an eligible use. That's why, I mean, if you think back to the catalyst of the public drinking water program, it was something that you could use these funds on that affected, while it affected these individuals that were affected with PFAS, it affected the community as a whole as opposed to the individual. So that's one of those pieces where you can't use taxpayer dollars for private gain. That rule is always the same.
Thank you for that clarification. And I guess my final part would be, I think, obviously, look at a lot of the towns that have done their bonuses or retention bonuses, so we are not abnormal for doing this. I think that's one of the things we should actually look at doing. From there, I think it almost needs to be a special meeting, workshop, get the whiteboard out and facilitate it and go through. I think it's pretty important and a chance to do it right.
What's the council's thoughts on that one?
To do a, Matt, are you talking about a separate workshop day just to handle all this money?
I know it's difficult, but I think it'd be worthwhile.
I think that would be better to do it together than to come up with individual items.
Yep.
I would rather do it that way.
I mean, is there any reason why we couldn't have it at a workshop at the end of one of our regular sessions rather than having 6 or 8 items on there?
Yeah.
Why not have that the item?
The designated item.
The item, and we spend an hour or more going over it.
I'm all for
If
that.
somebody, if we do our due diligence at home and look this over and come up with some numbers in our own heads so that we have something to put up there, I don't see where it would take us an exorbitant amount of time to finalize some numbers.
So maybe the town council meeting on September 28th, like a month from now, give people time, or do you want, were you thinking the 14th?
Matt, you,
I think the 28th is actually a good idea from Mark, give us a month, and also that gives a chance to get back to the departments and get a prioritized list from them and look at the, kind of look how they fit into the budget, just like what Mark was asking before.
let the department heads know there's a finite number that they'll have to work with, so really, think about what it is you want to have. I mean, we're going to entertain what's on their wish list. We're going to do both of them, but we've got a finite number we're working with, so have them.
Certainly can do that. And then I also, too, will make sure that the council gets a fully updated capital account balances, that we can have that, too, while you're doing your due diligence. As soon as this month is ended, those will all be updated with any interest, that sort of stuff. So we'll get that for you.
Does the town have access to like a portable whiteboard or something we could set up, dry erase markers,
Do you?
or
Yes.
something we could get in here so that, anybody wanted to write stuff up?
One of our departments has one. I know we have a
Yeah,
whole bunch of
we've
those
had-
giant pieces, I think, of
Yes.
Post-it paper that we can put up. We'll come up with something
Okay.
so that we have a really good
Yeah.
piece, so
'Cause
we'll
I
have a
like to see,
good
like Michael
function.
said, I like to see that stuff up there.
We won't just be sitting, you'll be able to interact. So,
Not
Can you,
not to mention
can you
the
do Excel
spreadsheets.
spreadsheets on these monitors?
yes, we absolutely can.
Okay.
That might work
Yeah.
better. Whatever you decide, I'm fine.
Yep, we can do a whole host of things. So you got time to think about it, and certainly to, please let me know if there's anything specific that you need, or anything specific you would like to see, because the sooner, of course, we can get folks working on it, the better. Especially if there's a project that doesn't have an associated cost with it, that you really want to know good ballpark price range of something that you're looking at. Like I said, some of them have estimates, some of them do not. And we can try to do some quick down and dirty phone call estimates, as opposed to the full bid process with some of these larger projects, like the doors and how much all of that is supposed to be. I think they had gotten some of those prices before, but time being what it was, we just didn't have the number, so.
Okay, then I guess
You
we'll
work
plan
it.
on that.
All right.
Moving on and do it. All right, we'll move on now, discuss other council business. Anybody have anything? I'm good. Matt?
I'm just proud of this council. So I think, we all make mistakes, but we all try hard, and we're all there to do a good job for the citizens of this town, and that gets lost sometimes. So I'm proud to be a part of this council. I'm proud to work with all of you.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
The last
And
council,
the same to you.
yes.
Yes.
Last council meeting, I asked a question about the River Jack Tavern, and I answered my own question. I went down there, took my wife out to dinner, and talked to the owner, and he says he hasn't been able to line up any live bands yet, so he hasn't really put it all
There
together
hasn't
yet.
been anything
So-
together yet.
And I also followed up on your question and heard that, no, there were no complaints, so,
Well, there.
and that would be why.
That might be why.
That might be why. They are very busy, though, so.
Yes,
that
they
is-
certainly
that is
are.
Well, we had a great meal.
Yeah. Okay, now, the next regular meeting of the Fairfield Town Council will be held on Wednesday, September 14th, 2022, and it will be held as a hybrid meeting via Zoom in council chambers at 6:30 a.m.
No, I don't think so.
Oh, p.m.
Yes.
You'll be by yourself.
I just wanted to get everybody up early and see if we could.
Yeah, not happening, no.
All right. And at this time, we will go into recess, sign all documents that require of signatures of council members.
Motion?
Motion.
Motion.
Second.
Okay.
We are in recess.
And roll call, Pachadi?
Yes.